April 2018, an indie dev, Cole Jeffries, would announce on Twitter they're working on a sandbox stealth detective game named Shadows of Doubt. At the same time, I was making horrible life choices by shaving my beard down to a goatee. June 2020, mad genius Cole Jeffries would drop a 30-second gameplay tease while I recovered from bad facial hair choices, restoring my beard to its final glory. But more importantly, I'd catch this teaser and be hooked from here on out. The idea of being a hard-boiled gumshoe in a seedy city with endless crimes to investigate and all being procedurally generated. What was not to be excited for? Growing up, I was introduced to the genre of crime investigations, and in the way that any reasonable child should be, starting with movies and TV. I started with the classics, such as Who Was Framed Roger Rabbit and Fillmore. Then as I grew older, my taste grew. CSI, Law and Order. Those took hold. Those were good times. And then, one fateful day, my old man introduced me to the legendary, the classic Blade Runner. No, not that one. Go away. Shoot. Yes, get out of here. Ugh. Yes, that one. Oh god, yes, that one. Chef's kiss. Watching these, I was always reminded, scratching in the back of my head, that Shadows of Doubt was coming. And finally, after a long wait, it was finally here. And I took to my stream to finally stream it. You should come on down, check it out. It's really great. You know, we do crimes, we do things. I swear this is not a shameless plug. This is not a review of Shadows of Doubt, but rather my first impressions after streaming the game for 4 hours. If you don't want to watch the whole thing, well, ow, my feelings. But secondly, if you like crime scene investigation shows and games, it's worth a look. Just a reminder that there is some janks and older rigs may struggle to run this game, but otherwise, it has my thumbs up and it's definitely worth a look. Have fun. For those who are staying, I think the best way to explain Shadows of Doubt is to walk you through my first investigation. Shadows of Doubt is a procedurally generated crime investigating sandbox. Each player's city layout, citizens, and businesses will be different from each other within some parameters to allow the simulation to work. Each player's city will look similar with a gritty, run-down look, but the layouts, names of citizens, streets, and businesses will be different, which, for the sake of the sandbox simulation, is more than acceptable. The amount of work that would be required to add in, say, I don't know, a city from Saudi Arabia or a city that looks like London would be a Herculean effort, and for the love of God, Cole has suffered enough, please let this man rest. However, the game does have one introductory case that is consistent for all players, and that will be the introductory case, The Dead of Night. This case starts the same and has similar clues that to catch the player onto all, if not most of the mechanics of investigation, with enough random generation that the case can be solved differently for each player that experiences it. I know from talking to several viewers in my stream that they all solved the case in different ways to how I eventually ended up solving the case. The investigation started in the dead of night. Get it? Dead of night? Because eventually we'll find someone dead? Oh, come on, I thought it was clever. We awake alone in our apartment, guided to turn on the lights and slowly investigate our home. As you slowly make your way through the apartment, we'd eventually receive a phone call, with nothing but heavy breathing and no response, only to have moments later a note slip under our door. Find Rashish Renman, which leads to the first mechanics of the game, and what I didn't know subconsciously would scratch an itch I didn't even know I had. The caseboard. You've all seen it, even without playing this game. You know exactly what the caseboard is. You might refer to it as the whiteboard, the chalkboard with strings, or that goddamn meme from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Every item, name, person, location, or fact can and will be placed on this board, all linked with wonderful string. Every item and every name, location, person, or thing that you place on your board can be linked with string that you make a note for, so that you can build up the investigation in your head and you know what's linked to what, and what by why. Each color-coded, maybe you'll use red for items and of the victim, maybe blue for a primary suspect, or yellow string for an item that you know is linked to someone but you haven't quite figured it out yet, all with custom notes. It is an absolutely delightful system, and it is amazing to be using. You'll start with a name, maybe some items, maybe a location, a business card or two, with a slightly full but somewhat readable board, to eventually, oh dear God, we've made a web of mysteries and lies and I love it. but I'm jumping ahead. Seemingly, with nothing better to do, we gather our things and we'll take the first hint, look up the name in our address book to find the nearby apartment of Rashish and begin the investigation. Arriving at the apartment of Rashish, we are advised on ways we can gain entry. We could try knocking to see if we get an answer and ask to be let in. We can pick the lock, but with the cameras, turrets, and citizens walking by, there's a risk of being caught and gunned down. Security systems can be disabled if you find the correct security panel, and I have the picks available, but that does seem like a lot of effort. We could brute force the door, which takes time and makes a lot of noise, and most likely will involve a bullet into my nicely new clean shirt. Or we can get our diehard on and start crawling through the vents, where it turns out that Cole decided that every building will have a vent. Yes, all of them. All of them. Vents are a free way of gaining entry into the different businesses and apartments around the place, as the covers aren't locked. However, they do require some navigational skills, which certainly shouldn't be too. After breaking into the wrong apartment via the vents, shut up, we eventually broke into Rashish's apartment and to find him dead already. With access to the apartment, we begin to gather our evidence. While everything, and I mean absolutely everything, can be placed onto your caseboard, not everything is important. It's up to you to determine what is important or maybe important. When in doubt, pin it and place it into the corner for future reference. Maybe something will come up that you can link it to another person or another piece of evidence later on, and it will be way easier for you to have it there already and not have to go back to try and find what missing piece you'll need. Through our search, we learned a key information. Rashish was shot with a small caliber weapon, and we found a secondary set of fingerprints. It turns out that every citizen has unique fingerprints that can be ID'd to a person on any surface, allowing you to determine if a person was in a location with the victim or person. We found a receipt to a nearby cafe moments before his death. We found a note of Rashish looking to buy a piece before his death. We found his place of work. And finally, he received a phone call moments before his death. Little did I know that this piece of evidence would be the most important of all, and it would blow the case completely wide open. Before I could search anymore, the local authorities came banging into the apartment and I had to make my escape. But I did have a number of leads, and it was up to me to decide which one I wanted to take up first. After quick deliberation, I determined my first port of call would be the local diner, figuring the last person to see Rashish alive could either be the killer or at least clue me in onto what Rashish was afraid of. But before arriving at the diner, the game advised us to head to the town hall and collect what was called a resolution form. This is the form where you'll be able to provide the evidence and clues that you've gathered over the case to be able to resolve the current case that you're on. The only requirement is to know the killer's name. However, this will give out a minimum payout. If you want additional funds, you'll need to answer the optional evidence. These will include if you've arrested the killer yourself, knowing the killer's address, having found evidence that places the killer at the scene of the crime, and of course locating the murder weapon. Each of these is optional, but pay out for each correct answer. Interestingly, none of the evidence that you gather will automatically highlight saying that this is a key bit of evidence. If you pick up the murder weapon, it won't automatically flag saying this is the murder weapon. You have to pay attention yourself. If the game mentions that this person was shot with a small caliber gun, you need to pay attention to what guns you find if it is the right one. Obviously, this early on in this case, I had no clue, so I continued my investigation. But I knew what I was looking for, so we continued on to the diner, the Chomp Squirrel Diner, to finally see whom Rashish was meeting before his time of death. On arrival, we're presented with more hints for our investigation toolbox, questioning NPCs, and the importance of businesses, with most importance being the security systems. Starting with the NPCs, like meeting real people out in the wild, they can be awfully disappointing. But unlike people out in the wild, it's due to the limited options you have to interact with them, and obviously the simulation not being quite fleshed out to deal with the people. And what I mean by that is you're limited in what you can ask the NPCs, and it does get quite frustrating. The only things you can ask most NPCs for that individual's names, their fingerprints, have they heard anything strange, do they know someone, which will come from your caseboard, if they own a business or they work for a premises, you can ask them for a guest pass, which will allow you to search the premises without getting attacked or flagged security, or you can ask them for the PIN for the security systems. That's it. What makes it annoying is several instances where, in the case of the investigation, you'll naturally want to press the individual for more information as they would know it. A fine example came up in my second investigation where the victim was found dead in the apartment of their lover. But questioning the partner, you could only ask who their partner was. You couldn't tell them that they were dead, you couldn't tell them that they were found in their apartment dead, nada. Even more disappointing is when you finally get to arrest the killer, you don't even get the satisfaction of getting a confession out of them. This is a very minor complaint, and looking at the roadmap, I'm guessing Cole knows it, as it's come up as a upcoming update in the next few months, so hopefully that this can be fleshed out. Again, it is just a very minor complaint, but a complaint nevertheless. After trying to quiz the staff, whom honestly I don't think get paid enough to even remember who came in that day, I opted to try and go through the security system. I decided to bribe the staff for the aforementioned day pass, which gives me 2 hours of time to search the location without being harassed. I traded into the security room, jumped onto a terminal, and began looking through the security system. You'll find terminals in almost every apartment, business, and shops. All will contain emails, printers, and most of them will have access to security systems where you can watch the last 48 hours of recorded footage. Adding a nice timed element to gathering certain pieces of evidence. If you dilly-dally too much, you can end up losing a piece of evidence permanently for taking too long to get to a scene. The receipt we found earlier came with a timestamp of when they made their purchase, so we know roughly what time Rashish would have been at the premises. So, searching through the footage, we end up finding Rashish and whom this person was having a meal with. But most importantly, where, which led us to finding a note with a name on it, which hopefully would match up to the person that we found having a meal with Rashish. From the note, we learned a name, Jia Nam, a co-worker to Rashish. Looking in the address book, we found that they lived nearby and made our way over to the apartment complex. Upon finding their apartment, Jia answered the door and was willing to answer all my questions, but most importantly, offering up their fingerprints. The fingerprints did not match the fingerprints we found back at the apartment, which meant that Jia could not possibly be the killer. With one suspect down and one lead dead, we moved on to our next lead, the gun dealer. A quick trick to the gun dealer and the secret passphrase that we found on the note back at the apartment and a bribe led to a stunning conclusion. Yep, Rashish bought a gun. That's it, just a gun. Annoyingly, with the lacking options of interacting, we couldn't ask anything important or any follow-up questions such as, was Rashish afraid of anyone? Did Rashish mention why they needed the gun? Just, nope. Rashish bought a gun. Great, another dead end. With 2 dead leads, I decided to head back to Jai's apartment to gather more evidence, and oh boy. Okay, yep, that was unexpected. Another body, another victim, and I'm still no closer to resolving this case. Despite the body jiggling, I can assure you, she's definitely dead. Maybe she was dead? I don't know. Look, I poked it with a stick. I'm pretty sure she's dead. But what I did learn from the investigating Jai's body was that Jai was killed with the same small caliber firearm, and we found the exact same prints at Rashish's apartment in Jai's apartment, meaning the killer is one and the same. We're now dealing with a serial killer. Knowing that Jai and Rashish worked together at a company called Plum Management, I was hoping that maybe there might be an email between the two. Just a name, a face, something that can let me know what the two of them were afraid of. Because clearly both of them were being targeted by the same individual. 30 minutes of sneaking in their workplace, trying to get onto their computers, finding codes, finding pins, avoiding the cameras, avoiding the security systems, speaking to their co-workers, getting nowhere. Eventually, I found a single name, but it was just a first name, but it was something. The name? Erix. It was an email between Jai and Rashish warning that Erix was coming for them, but it was just a single name with a question mark. Was this even a real name? Was it a code name? I didn't even have a face, and everyone I questioned, like me, didn't know who it could be. I was stumped. At this point, I thought the investigation was dead in the water and I had failed. But then chat reminded me of something very important. after breaking into the wrong apartment via the vents. No, not that. The evidence. He received a phone call moments before his death. Yep, that's right. The phone call. The goddamn phone call at the beginning of the game. I forgot to follow that up. I had to rush all the way back to Rashish's apartment and investigate the phone call that he received beforehand. The game allows you to go down into the basement of any place and it will have a phone router which then you can use to check the incoming calls and figure out the origin of the phone calls. This was finally it. A new lead. Well, old lead. Shut up. I remembered. Investigating the call, it turned out the call was made from someone inside the apartment complex. Oh boy, this was it. It was all coming together. Finally, I would have my answers. I knocked on the door. Somebody was home. I waited and waited. And finally, the NPC answered the door, but didn't answer any of my questions and wasn't taking any bribes. But this had to be the guy. This was the only lead that I hadn't figured out. My next course of action was to wait. Eventually, this guy would have to leave to go to work. He would have to go somewhere. The plan was simple. Break into his apartment, search for fingerprints, search for an ID, and hopefully, with a little bit of luck, the fingerprints would match and I would have my killer. This had to be the Erics that both Jai and Rashish were afraid of. Unfortunately, while I am the world's greatest detective, I'm not the greatest thief and was caught almost instantaneously, which preceded us into having some good old-fashioned fisticuffs. Little did I know that he was a wizard that was able to fall through the floor to try and get away from my fists of justice. However, I managed to knock him out and decided to search him, finding, yes, the matching prints and his full name, Erix Donux, our killer. And, of course, the small caliber gun, the same used to kill Rashish and Jai. I'd solved the case. We had his name, we had him in cuffs, we had his address, we had the evidence that places him at the scene of the crime, we had the murder weapon. Case closed. Overall, I thought it was a fantastic introduction case. Let you in on the inner workings of the game and all the mechanics that you'll be dealing with, and get and explore this vast, randomly generated world. After this, it would lead to getting my own apartment that you could furnish, opening up side activities that allow for mini investigations and fights, as well as ongoing murders that will be randomly generated as you solve each and every single one of them. Of course, like everything, there is some laws and some bugs. During my session, I managed to encounter a bug that allowed me to fall through the floors twice, taking serious injury. The zoom option for the map kept failing to allow me to zoom in or out. On a follow-up case, when I was looking through the security recordings, the square didn't quite highlight with the suspect's face, which in a group of suspects made it hard to actually tell if I was looking at the right suspect when the two of them were sitting next to each other. And also at the time, the Twitch integration sadly wasn't working. The Twitch integration was to allow the Twitch followers and viewers to be added to the world, and unfortunately at the time of this recording, that wasn't working, which was kind of a bummer, because I really want to see my friends and family and viewers murder each other, and if you do that in real life, unfortunately, it's illegal, so this is the closest I can get to, and it's very sad, and it makes me want to cry. I'm sure that the issues were going to get patched out, and at the time of this recording, there's already been a patch that was pushed out to fix a bunch of bugs. On my second playthrough, I hadn't fallen through the floor, so it looks like the game's getting to a better, more stable position. Only thing I would like to see as a quality of life update would be if you are looking at recordings and you have a name and a face, that you could automatically have those sections where that person appears on recording be highlighted, so you didn't have to painstakingly go through potentially 20, 30, 40 tabs to try and find the right timestamp for this person and potentially overlook a critical bit of evidence to your investigation. Overall, I'm enjoying my time with Shadows of Doubt, and I'm going to continue playing this amazing game. I'm going to be streaming it more. No, that's not a shameless plug, shut up. Cole really smashed this out of the park, and it's fantastic when a game that you've been waiting for so long finally pays off and it actually lives up to the hype. Looking at you, Anthem, you piece of shit. If you're even a little bit curious, pick it up now. It's on sale right now. Or better yet, come to my stream and have a look. We're close to 500 followers, and I really need that ego boost because I didn't get enough hugs when I was a kid. Anyway, that's all for now. I've got more murders to solve, more windows to smash, more people to intimidate. Feel free to give me a follow for more content coming up. But anyway, have a great day, stay safe, take care everyone.